The rain stopped at 3:17 in the morning, and every bell in Vera City began screaming. Mira Solane woke with her cheek pressed against cold tile, one hand still clutching the wrench she had fallen asleep beside. Above her, the ceiling pipes trembled. Not from water. There had been no true water in the pipes for 9 years. From pressure. From silence. She sat up too fast and struck her shoulder against the underside of the maintenance desk. "Rain line?" she whispered. The emergency speaker cracked alive. "All district engineers report to lower pump chambers. Repeat. All district engineers report immediately. Surface precipitation has ceased. Reservoir intake failure expected within 6 hours." Mira stopped breathing. Outside the small basement window, the whole city was awake. Vera was built downward instead of upward. A canyon of iron balconies, glass bridges, steam vents, and old stone carved into the walls of a dried sea basin. For 32 years, artificial rain had fallen from the cloud engines above the rim, feeding cisterns, crops, bathhouses, laundries, hospitals, and every cup placed beneath every tap. No one alive remembered a dry sky. Mira grabbed her coat and ran. The stairwell was packed with people in nightclothes. A father carried 2 sleeping children. An old woman had a birdcage under one arm. Someone was praying softly in the dark between alarm pulses. At street level, thousands stood with their faces tilted upward. The sky over Vera City was naked. No silver curtains of rain. No mist. No soft percussion on rooftops. Only the distant black shapes of the cloud engines hanging from the cliffs like dead moons. Mira pushed through the crowd toward Gate 7. A boy of maybe 12 caught her sleeve. "Engineer," he said. "Is it broken?" She looked at him, at the cracked dryness already forming on his lips, and hated herself for not knowing how to lie kindly. "I'm going to find out." The lower pump chambers were beneath the city's oldest district, where walls sweated mineral salts and every footstep echoed like a verdict. By the time Mira arrived, Chief Oren had already gathered the night crew around the central pressure map. He was a square man with silver eyebrows and a voice that usually sounded like doors closing. Tonight it sounded smaller. "The western intake is empty," he said. "Northern reserve is dropping. Southern reserve is contaminated with turbine ash." Someone cursed. Someone else laughed once. A thin, frightened sound. Mira stared at the pressure map. Blue lights blinked across the city's veins, each one marking stored water. One by one, they were dimming. "That's impossible," she said. "The cloud engines draw vapor from the upper sea. Even if one failed." "All 6 stopped," Oren said. The room went quiet. Mira looked at him. At the same time? At the same time. Behind her, Jalen Voss stepped out from the shadow of a boiler stack, still buttoning his guard captain's jacket. His black hair was damp from old pipe condensation, and there was a fresh bruise along his jaw. Mira had not seen him in 8 months. Not since the inquiry. Not since he had stood in a public hall and said he believed her father had stolen city engine plans before disappearing beyond the rim. His eyes found hers. Neither of them spoke. Oren did not bother pretending he missed it. Captain Voss brought the first report from the rim stations. "Say it." Jalen's mouth tightened. "The engine crews are gone." Mira felt the words pass through the room before she understood them. "Gone?" she said. "No bodies. No distress signals. No equipment packed. Meals still on tables. Logbooks open. Every station empty." A younger engineer crossed herself. Mira stepped closer to the map. "Then someone shut them down." "That is the working assumption," Jalen said. His official voice. The one he used when he wanted a wall between himself and guilt. Mira leaned over the map, forcing herself to think. 6 cloud engines. 6 crews. 6 silent stations. No storm, no sabotage blast, no warning. Only absence. "Can we restart from here?" Oren asked. "No," Mira said. "The ignition keys are physical. Each engine has one. They're kept on site. Then we send teams up." Jalen shook his head. "The lifts to the rim aren't responding. Tracks are locked from above." Mira turned on him. "So climb." The rim ladders were cut. A second silence fell, worse than the first. Vera City had lived in a bowl for generations. The rim was less than a kilometer above them, visible from almost every balcony, close enough to make children believe they could throw stones to it. Now it might as well have been the moon. Oren rubbed both hands over his face. How long? Mira watched another blue light die. With strict rationing? 3 days before hospitals lose pressure. 5 before the East Farms fail. After that, panic kills faster than thirst. No, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Counselor Selimeric entered wearing ceremonial white, though one sleeve was torn and there was soot at her collar. She had ruled the Water Council for 16 years, smiling from parade platforms while engineers like Mira crawled through rust and steam to keep the city alive. Behind her came 2 council guards carrying a sealed brass case. We will not announce 5 days, Sela said. We announce 20. Calmly, with confidence. Mira stared at her. That would be a lie. That would prevent riots. That would prevent preparation. Sela's face hardened. Engineer Solane, your family's relationship with civic trust is already complicated. Choose your next words carefully. Jalen looked away. Mira felt the old wound open, hot and precise. My father warned you the engines were vulnerable, she said. You buried his report. My council investigated your father. You ruined him. He vanished with restricted designs. He vanished because someone wanted him gone. The brass case clicked open. Inside lay a single object wrapped in oilcloth. An ignition key, black metal, long as a human hand, etched with the spiral mark of the first engine builders. Mira forgot her anger. That's not city issue, she said. Sela watched her closely. Your father sent it to my office 12 minutes before the rain stopped. The pump chamber seemed to tilt. Mira reached for the key, but Jalen caught her wrist. Don't. His touch was familiar enough to hurt. She pulled free. If my father sent this, he's alive. Or someone wants you to think he is, Jalen said. Mira lifted the oilcloth. Beneath the key was a folded strip of waterproof paper. Only 4 words were written on it in her father's hand. Do not restart them. Before anyone could speak, the oldest pipe in Vera City groaned above their heads. Then something inside the wall knocked back. Once, twice, like a person trapped behind stone. Mira turned toward the sound. The dead water gauge beside her flickered blue. The knocking came again. Not random. 3 strikes. Pause. 2 strikes. Every engineer in the chamber froze. The old pressure pipe ran vertically through the room like the trunk of a fossilized tree, iron ribs disappearing into darkness above and below. Most of the network had been dead for decades, sealed after the lower aquifers collapsed. Nothing should have been moving inside it. Chief Oren stepped backward first. Jalen drew the sidearm from his belt. Mira moved closer. Don't, Jalen snapped. She ignored him. The blue flicker on the dead gauge strengthened. Weak, unsteady, but alive. Mira pressed her palm against the pipe. Warm. Not machine warm. Body warm. Then a voice came through the metal. Distorted. Crushed by distance. Hear me. Several people gasped. Oren crossed himself again. Faster this time. Mira grabbed a maintenance wrench and slammed it twice against the pipe. Who's there? Static crackled through the iron. Then, Mira. Her blood went cold. Not because she recognized the voice. Because she almost did. The sound scraped through old layers of memory. Childhood nights in maintenance tunnels. Stories whispered over engine noise. The rhythm of someone reading diagrams aloud while she fell asleep beside toolkits. Her father. No. Impossible. Jalen stepped beside her now. Weapon lowered but ready. Could be relay feedback. There are no active relays in the dead pipes, Mira said. The voice returned, clearer this time. They found the wells. A violent metallic scream tore through the chamber overhead. Everyone looked up. The ceiling pipes buckled inward. One burst. Not water. Black dust exploded downward like ash from a grave. The room erupted into shouting. Seal the vents. Mask filters. Get the counselor out. Mira staggered back coughing as engineers rushed for emergency covers. The black powder coated faces, clothes, instruments. Jalen seized Sela Merrick by the arm and pulled her behind a pressure console while guards raised breathing cloths. Another pipe ruptured. Then another. The knocking stopped. The gauge died. Mira stared at the drifting ash. Not ash. Spores. Tiny filament threads twisted inside the black powder like living hair. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. Oren looked at her sharply. "What is it?" She remembered a report her father had written 15 years ago. Buried. Mocked. Forgotten. A contamination beyond the northern rim. A growth inside abandoned wells. Something feeding on moisture. Something alive. "The hollow rot," she said. Nobody answered. Nobody except Sela. The counselor's face had gone pale beneath the soot. "You said that was eradicated," Mira said quietly. Sela did not meet her eyes. "You knew," Oren barked. "We isolated the outbreak years ago," Sela snapped. "The infected wells were sealed." Mira stepped toward her. "You told the city it was mineral disease. We prevented panic. You buried it. We contained it." Jalen cut between them before Mira could get closer. "Enough. Right now we survive first." Another alarm began ringing above the city. Not the rain alarm. The gate alarm. Deep, slow, ancient. Every person in the chamber recognized it instantly. Outer breach. Jalen's communicator crackled. "Captain, District 4 reports movement in the dry canals." "What kind of movement?" Silence. Then, "People." The line died in static. The climb into District 4 felt like ascending into another world. Vera's lower streets were built around water channels that had once carried overflow from the reservoirs. Most had been dry for years, converted into markets, sleeping quarters, machine alleys. Now black dust drifted through them like winter snow. Citizens crowded balconies overhead. Fear moved faster than truth. Rumors crashed through the streets in waves. The rain was poisoned. The engines exploded. The council fled. The rim had opened. Mira followed Jalen through the canal district with Oren and 6 city guards behind them. The deeper they went, the quieter the city became. No vendors. No children. No generator music. Only distant bells and the hiss of drifting spores. Then they saw them. Figures standing in the canal bed ahead. Motionless. 30, maybe 40 people. Everyone coated in black dust. Mira slowed. Their clothes were wrong. Old styles. Old uniforms. Engine crew jackets. One of the guards whispered, "Saints preserve us." The figures turned together. Not naturally. Like one thought moved all of them at once. Myra's pulse hammered. Their skin was gray beneath the spores. Eyes clouded white. Veins darkened into branching lines across their throats and cheeks. One stepped forward. A woman. Her cloud engine insignia still visible beneath the dust. Jalen raised his weapon. The woman spoke before he could fire. "We are thirsty." Her voice sounded layered. Multiple voices underneath one. The guards retreated immediately. Mira stood frozen. The infected woman tilted her head slowly toward Mira. "You are Solane blood." Mira felt every hair rise along her arms. "How do you know my name?" The woman smiled. Not cruelly. Sadly. "Your father came below." Jalen's gun clicked louder. "Where is he?" The infected woman pointed downward. Not toward the city. Beneath it. "The wells are waking." The canal walls shuddered. A low vibration rolled through the stone beneath their feet. Then came the sound. Not mechanical. Breathing. Huge. Ancient. From deep under Vera. Several infected people began trembling violently. Black spores lifted from their skin in faint clouds. Mira saw terror in their eyes. Real terror. "They're afraid," she whispered. The woman looked at her one final time. "He tried to stop the mouth from opening." "Who?" "Your father." Then every infected person turned and began walking into the darkness of the lower canals. Not attacking. Leaving. Jalen cursed and moved after them. But Mira caught his arm. "Wait. We need answers." They wanted us to follow. And Mira looked toward the black tunnel descending beneath the city. The old flood tunnels, sealed generations ago. No maps, no patrols, only stories. Something moved far below them. Not footsteps, something heavier. The ground trembled again. Behind them, bells erupted across the city. All at once, every district. A scream echoed from somewhere above the canal levels. Then another, then dozens. Jalen activated his communicator. Static answered him. The lights overhead flickered. One by one, the street lamps died. Darkness spread through the canal district like spilled ink. In the distance, somewhere beneath Vera City, something enormous exhaled, and the sound carried water with it. The city lost power in layers. First, the canal lights vanished. Then the upper bridge lamps blinked out district by district until Vera became a descending staircase of darkness. Somewhere overhead, people screamed names into the black. Emergency sirens fought to stay alive on failing generators. Mira stood in the canal bed listening to the breathing below the city. Water moved with it, not flowing, circulating, like blood inside a sleeping animal. Jalen grabbed her shoulder. We're leaving. No. This whole district is compromised. My father's down there, and whatever's breathing down there probably killed him. Mira stared into the flood tunnel where the infected had disappeared. The entrance looked older than the city around it. Stone edges worn smooth by centuries of vanished water. Black spores drifted from inside like smoke. Chief Oren approached slowly, face pale beneath the emergency lantern glow. The council's evacuating upper residents toward the central towers, he said. Riots started in Market Tier. Of course they did, Jalen muttered. Oren looked toward the tunnel. Tell me we are not considering going in there. Mira crouched near the tunnel mouth. Moisture covered the stone floor. Fresh moisture. She touched it carefully. Cold water. Real water. Her pulse skipped. Look! Jalen lowered his lantern. Thin streams seeped through cracks in the ancient tunnel walls. Not recycled condensation. Not reservoir runoff. Groundwater. Oren stared. Impossible. No, Mira whispered. Hidden. She remembered sitting at her father's workshop table when she was 10 years old. Watching him sketch maps the council insisted were myths. Deep aquifers beneath Vera. Natural oceans trapped under stone. The city had abandoned them generations ago after seismic collapses poisoned the upper wells. At least that was the official story. Mira looked at the dark water between her fingers. Her father had been right. Again, a violent boom shook the district. Dust rained from overhead. Jalen activated his communicator once more. This time a voice broke through the static. Captain, creatures in East Tier. Not citizens, moving through dry pipes. Gunfire erupted behind the transmission. Then silence. Oren backed away instinctively. Seal the tunnel. Mira stood. No. You heard the reports. If water still exists down there, this city survives. If whatever's down there comes back up, nobody survives. Mira stepped closer to him. The council lied about the rot. They lied about the wells. My father disappeared trying to expose it. We finally have proof. Oren's eyes hardened. And if proof gets us all killed? Before she could answer, Jalen holstered his weapon. Both turned toward him. We go in, he said. Mira blinked. You believe me? No, he said honestly. But I believe something is happening beneath this city that the council already understands better than we do. Oren cursed under his breath. Jalen turned to the guards. You don't have to come. None moved. One guard, barely older than 17, swallowed hard. If there's water down there, nobody finished the sentence. They did not need to. Vera without water was already dead. The flood tunnel descended in spirals. Old builder marks covered the walls. Symbols from before the modern city, carved by the first settlers who had dug refuge into the basin centuries earlier. The deeper they climbed downward, the warmer the air became. And wetter. Real droplets gathered on stone ceilings. Myra's lantern caught rusted machinery embedded in the walls. ancient pumps bigger than houses, their gears fused by time. Some still trembled faintly. "Who built all this?" the young guard whispered. Mira answered without looking back. "The people who found the wells." The tunnel widened suddenly into a vast circular chamber. Everyone stopped. An underground lake stretched before them, black as oil beneath the lantern glow. Massive support pillars vanished upward into darkness. Ancient bridges crossed the water, many collapsed into ruin. And along the far shore stood hundreds of figures. Silent, watching, the infected. Not dozens, hundreds, maybe more. They stood motionless at the edge of the underground sea, illuminated by strange blue fungus growing along the cavern walls. Some wore engine uniforms. Others wore city clothing from every era imaginable. Generations. Jalen slowly reached for his weapon again. Mira noticed something else. None of the infected crossed onto the bridges, as if they were waiting. Then a voice echoed across the cavern. "You shouldn't have come." A figure emerged from the crowd. Tall, thin, gray-haired, alive. Mira forgot how to breathe. Her father looked older, narrower, as though the underground darkness had carved years directly into his bones. But his eyes were the same steady amber she remembered from childhood. "Mira," he said softly. She crossed the bridge before anyone could stop her. When she reached him, she struck his chest with both fists. "You vanished. I know. You let them call you a traitor. I know. You left me." His face cracked then. Not physically, emotionally. Something inside him finally giving way after years of pressure. "I was trying to stop this city from dying." Mira grabbed his coat. "Then explain." Behind him, the infected remained still and silent. Her father looked toward them carefully. "They can hear us." Jalen crossed the bridge more cautiously, guards following with weapons raised. "What are they?" he demanded. "People," her father said. "No," Jalen replied. "Not anymore." The infected nearest him tilted their heads in eerie synchronization. Myra's father stepped between them. "The rot isn't a disease," he said quietly. The cavern seemed to absorb the words. "It's a network." Mira stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It lives in water," he said. "Microscopic organisms linked through electrical impulses. Memory sharing, communication, adaptation." Oren frowned. "That's impossible." "It was impossible until the lower wells were breached 70 years ago." Mira felt cold spread through her chest. "The council knew." "Yes. They poisoned the upper aquifers to seal this place." "Yes. And the rain engines?" Her father looked toward the underground lake. The wells woke up. The water moved, not from waves, from something turning beneath the surface. Far below them, huge, the infected all turned toward the lake at once. Every single one. Myra's father's voice dropped lower. "The rot learned." Jalen took one step backward. "What does that mean?" "It learned fear." The lake bulged upward. Water rolled across the shore. Something massive shifted beneath the black surface, large enough to displace the entire cavern. The guards raised rifles. The infected did not move. Mira heard it then, not through her ears. Inside her head, a distant layered whisper. Hungry, ancient, awake. The lake exploded upward, and a colossal shape began rising from the dark. The creature rose without sound. That terrified Mira more than if it had screamed. Water cascaded from its surface in black sheets as the cavern trembled beneath its weight. At first her mind tried to force it into recognizable shapes. Serpent, whale, machine, but the thing resisted understanding. It was too large, too wrong. A mass of pale ridges and shifting membranes emerged from the underground lake, threaded with veins of dim blue light pulsing beneath translucent flesh. Sections of it moved independently, folding and unfolding like breathing organs exposed to open air. And embedded inside its surface, faces, human faces, not attached, suspended, sleeping beneath layers of living tissue. The youngest guard screamed first. The infected along the shore lowered themselves to their knees simultaneously. Jalen raised his pistol with shaking hands. Back up. Myra's father grabbed the barrel and forced it downward. If you fire, he said, it will think you're all threats. Think. Jalen snapped. The colossal thing shifted again beneath the cavern roof. The whisper returned inside Myra's skull. Not words this time. Emotion. Pain. Loneliness so immense it almost dropped her to her knees. Mira pressed both hands against her temples. What is it? She whispered. Her father stared at the creature with exhausted eyes. The first well. No one understood. He pointed toward the underground lake. The settlers found this before they built Vera. They thought it was a water organism. Primitive. Dormant. The massive shape pulsed softly as though hearing him. They fed from it? Orin asked quietly. They built the city on top of it. Mira looked at the ancient support pillars vanishing upward into darkness. The realization hit her slowly. Every drop of water Vera had ever used had come from this thing. Jalen stared at the creature in disbelief. That's impossible. Not impossible, Myra's father said. Symbiotic. The infected nearest the shore lifted their heads together. The rot is its nervous system, her father continued. Microscopic extensions carrying signals through water networks. Memory. Awareness. Sensation. Mira remembered the voices in the pipes. The coordinated movements. The knocking. Not infection. Communication. Her stomach twisted. You said it learned fear. Her father nodded. When the council poisoned the lower wells 70 years ago, it felt millions of parts of itself die. The cavern darkened briefly as the creature's blue veins dimmed. It became afraid of us. Mira looked toward the sleeping faces trapped within the translucent flesh. Who are they? Her father's expression broke again. The missing. Silence. The engine crews. The vanished workers. Generations of disappearances hidden beneath council reports and collapsed tunnel records. Jalen's voice dropped. It killed them. No, said one of the infected suddenly. Everyone turned. An elderly woman stepped forward from the shoreline crowd. Black spores traced her skin like ink veins, but her eyes were clear. They joined. The creature pulsed once. Mira felt another emotional wave inside her mind. Not hunger. Invitation. The old woman touched her own chest gently. When the droughts worsened, some came willingly. To listen. To carry memory. Jalen looked horrified. That's insanity. The woman tilted her head. You carry memory too. Yours is only trapped in smaller bodies. The cavern rumbled. Above them, faintly, came another sound. Explosions. From the city. Jalen immediately turned toward the tunnel. We're done here. We go back now. No, Mira said. He stared at her. The rain stopped because this thing shut the engines down, she continued. Why? The creature's blue veins brightened. Her father answered carefully. Because the council found a way to kill it completely. Mira felt the air leave her lungs. What? The rain engines were never just weather systems. They were extraction machines. Every year the city needed more water, more pressure, more reserves. He pointed upward. The council approved a final drilling operation beneath the central towers, deep enough to rupture the core reservoir. Orin whispered, Saints. They planned to drain the entire lower system before abandoning Vera. Jalen looked toward Selamarek's absence as if realizing too late what kind of evacuation the council had begun. They're running. Yes, Myra's father said. And if they rupture the reservoir, this entire basin collapses. The young guard lowered his rifle slowly. How long? Her father met Myra's eyes. Hours. Panic rippled through the guards instantly. We have to warn the city. They won't listen, Orin said. They'll listen to the guard captain. The young soldier argued desperately. Jalen did not answer, because they all knew the truth. The city was already unraveling. Without water, fear had become stronger than law. Mira stepped toward the lake. The colossal organism watched her. Not with eyes, with awareness. The whispers pressed softly against her mind again. Fragments. Images. Ancient settlers kneeling beside underground springs. children drinking from crystal pools, workers collapsing tunnels after the first contamination, council meetings, secrets, fire, poison. Then another image. The central towers above the city. Machines drilling downward. Closer, closer. Mira staggered back gasping. They've already started. The creature moved for the first time toward the shore. Not aggressively, weakly. Its colossal body dragged against the cavern floor with terrible effort. Her father closed his eyes briefly. It's dying. The infected all bowed their heads. Mira suddenly understood the silence in them. The sadness. They were not controlled. They were connected to a thing that had spent generations being poisoned by the civilization living above it. And still it had kept giving them water. Jalen stepped beside her. If the reservoir ruptures, the basin collapses, Mira repeated. Everyone dies. Above them another tremor shook dust from the cavern ceiling. This one stronger. Stone cracked somewhere in the darkness overhead. The creature recoiled violently. Pain exploded through Myra's skull like an echo. One of the infected cried out. Then dozens. The entire shoreline convulsed as if sharing the same wound. Her father looked toward the tunnel urgently. You need to stop the drilling now. Mira looked at him. You're coming with us. He hesitated too long. Her expression hardened instantly. You don't get to disappear again. Something almost like a smile touched his exhausted face. Then the cavern ceiling split open. A burning transport elevator plunged from above, trailing sparks and shattered metal. It crashed into the underground lake with catastrophic force. Black water erupted across the chamber. And from inside the wreckage came gunfire. The elevator wreckage burned on the surface of the underground lake. Gunfire flashed through steam and black water. Move! Jalen shouted. The guards scattered behind broken pillars as bullets ripped across the cavern. One infected man near the shoreline jerked backward and collapsed into the water. The creature beneath the lake convulsed. Pain slammed through Myra's skull so violently she nearly blacked out. Not physical pain. Shared pain. Dozens of infected people cried out together, clutching their heads. They can feel each other? Orrin whispered in horror. The burning elevator hatch exploded outward. Council security forces poured onto the wreckage platform in black armored coats, faces hidden behind breathing masks. Their commander stepped into the firelight carrying a flood rifle longer than his arm. Commander Thane. Mira recognized him instantly from city broadcasts beside Counselor Sella. The man responsible for enforcing disappearances, for silencing engineers, for hunting her father. Thane's amplified voice echoed across the cavern. By order of the Water Council, all contaminated individuals will surrender immediately. Jalen barked a bitter laugh. Contaminated. The commander's helmet turned toward him. Captain Voss. Stand down. No. Thane raised a hand. More security soldiers emerged from the elevator carrying cylindrical drilling charges. Myra's stomach dropped. They brought explosives. Her father stepped forward immediately. If those detonate near the reservoir, the city survives. Thane interrupted coldly. This organism does not. The infected shoreline stirred uneasily. Mira saw fear move through them like wind through grass. Not rage. Fear. The commander pointed directly at the colossal shape in the lake. That thing has manipulated this city for generations. Her father shook his head. It kept the city alive. It infected citizens. It connected with dying people abandoned by your council. Same result. The drilling charges hit the cavern floor with metallic thuds. Mira understood then. This was never rescue. This was extermination. Jalen slowly stepped in front of her. If you rupture the lower wells, the basin collapses. We calculated acceptable loss thresholds, Thane replied. Mira felt sick. The same language every corrupt system eventually learned. Acceptable losses. The creature beneath the water shifted again. Its blue veins dimmed further. Weakening. Dying. The whispers inside Myra's head became fragmented static. Her father turned urgently toward her. It won't defend itself. What? It learned fear from us. It associates violence with extinction. Gunfire erupted again. One of the infected had moved toward the security teams. Reflexively, soldiers opened fire, shredding the figure backward into the lake. The entire cavern screamed. Not acoustically, mentally. Mira dropped to one knee, clutching her skull. Around the shoreline, every infected person convulsed in shared agony. The organism beneath the water recoiled violently. Massive waves smashed against the bridges. Jalen shouted over the chaos. "They're hurting all of them." Her father grabbed Myra's shoulders. "Listen to me. It mirrors what it receives." "What does that mean?" "If they attack it long enough." Another mental shockwave tore through the cavern. "It will finally become afraid enough to fight back." The implication froze everyone nearby. The thing beneath the lake was larger than entire city districts. If it lashed out, Vera would not survive the night. Commander Thane raised one armored arm. "Plant the charges." Security teams moved across the bridge lines immediately. Jalen drew his weapon. So did the guards beside him. For one suspended second, nobody moved. Then the cavern exploded into violence. Jalen fired first. A council soldier spun backward into the lake. The guards opened fire beside him. Security forces answered instantly. Bullets sparked against ancient stone. Bridges shattered under impact fire. Screams echoed through the underground chamber. Mira dropped behind a pillar as fragments tore through the air. Her father dragged her lower. "We need to get to the central anchors." "What anchors?" "The old stabilizers holding the reservoir sealing together." Another explosion shook the cavern. One of the drilling charges detonated prematurely near the shoreline. The blast ripped infected bodies apart. And something changed. The organism moved. Not weakly, not slowly. The entire underground lake rose. Security soldiers stumbled as massive black waves lifted beneath them. Blue light erupted through the water in branching patterns like living lightning. The whisper inside Myra's mind transformed. No longer frightened. Angry. Terribly angry. "Everybody down!" her father screamed. The lake exploded upward. Tendrils of translucent flesh erupted from the water with horrifying speed, smashing into the bridge structures. Soldiers were thrown screaming into darkness. One enormous appendage wrapped around a security transport and crushed it like paper. The cavern ceiling cracked open wider. Stone rained downward. Jalen seized Myra's arm. "Move!" The infected did not flee. Instead, they walked calmly toward the water, toward the creature. Some disappeared beneath the surface willingly. Joining it, Mira watched with frozen horror as sleeping faces shifted beneath the translucent flesh. New faces emerging inside the organism like memories being absorbed. Her father shoved her toward a collapsing side bridge. "The anchors are this way." They ran through chaos. The cavern had become a war between panic and awakening. Security forces retreated toward the burning elevator platform, while the organism surged through the underground lake in colossal waves. Every movement cracked stone supports older than recorded history. The city above groaned. Mira could hear buildings collapsing far overhead now. Jalen fired behind them while retreating. "How many charges do they have left?" "Enough," her father answered grimly. A thunderous crack split the cavern. Everyone stopped. One of the central support pillars had fractured completely. The underground roof shifted several inches downward. Dust avalanched from above. Mira looked upward in terror. The entire basin was beginning to fail. Her father pointed toward a narrow maintenance tunnel ahead. Through there. They stumbled inside just as another explosion consumed the bridge behind them. The tunnel shook violently. Ancient emergency lights flickered weakly to life along the walls. Jalen leaned against the stone, catching his breath. "What's the plan?" Myra's father looked older than ever beneath the dying lights. "The anchors regulate pressure between the reservoir and the city above. And if we release the pressure correctly, the wells stabilize. And if we don't?" He met her eyes. "The city sinks into the reservoir." Silence. Behind them, the underground cavern roared like a dying ocean. Mira wiped blood from her forehead. "How long do we have?" Her father listened to the cracking stone around them. Then he answered softly, "Not long enough." The stabilizer chamber sat at the very bottom of Vera. Below the flood tunnels. Below the forgotten wells. Below even the underground lake where the organisms slept and suffered beneath the city for generations. Mira understood now why the old maps stopped halfway down. The founders had hidden this place deliberately. The chamber was enormous, circular, and carved directly into black stone that glistened with moisture. Four colossal pressure columns surrounded a central shaft descending into darkness without visible end. Ancient machinery wrapped the walls in layers of rusted gears and enormous valve systems bigger than houses. And every surface trembled. Dust sifted constantly from above. Jalen scanned the structure with disbelief. This was under the city the whole time? Her father nodded weakly. The original engineers built Vera around the reservoir pressure system. The cloud engines were only temporary solutions. Temporary? Mira said sharply. They've existed for a century. Because the council discovered the wells were alive and panicked. Another violent tremor rippled through the chamber. One of the pressure columns groaned like a wounded animal. Mira ran toward the central console. Most controls were dead, but several ancient gauges still flickered blue beneath layers of dust. Her engineering instincts took over instantly. The anchors are overloaded. Jalen joined her. Can we shut them down? No. If pressure releases too fast, the basin fractures. Her father stepped beside them. We have to equalize the flow manually. Mira stared at the machinery surrounding them. Manual release? These systems are prehistoric. They were built before automation. Above them, a distant roar thundered through the stone. The organism, still fighting, or dying. Mira forced herself to focus. For anchor columns, pressure imbalance spreading through the reservoir ceiling. If one failed completely, the others would cascade, and millions above them would vanish beneath collapsing stone and water. Her father pointed toward opposite sides of the chamber. Two release wheels must turn simultaneously. Jalen frowned. How simultaneously? Within 3 seconds. The wheels themselves were monstrous iron mechanisms mounted across the chamber from one another. Mira understood immediately. Human-powered. No motors. No shortcuts. She looked at the distance between them. Impossible alone. I'll take the eastern wheel, Jalen said immediately. Mira moved toward the western side. Her father caught her arm. No. You stay at the console. She stared at him. You know this system better. I know enough. You know all of it. Another tremor cracked through the chamber. One pressure gauge shattered. Water burst from the wall in violent streams. Her father looked at her with exhausted calm. Mira. She hated that tone. The goodbye tone. No. If the pressure spikes during release, someone has to regulate the secondary valves manually. No. You're the only one here who can. Jalen looked between them silently. Mira grabbed her father's coat. You do not get to leave again. Pain crossed his face. I already did. The chamber shook harder than before. A deep metallic scream echoed upward through the central shaft. One of the support structures above had collapsed. Jalen moved first toward the eastern wheel. We argue later, he barked. Move now. The old instincts of survival finally overpowered emotion. Mira ran for the console. Her father climbed the western platform ladder while Jalen reached the eastern side. Emergency pressure lights flickered crimson across the chamber. Mira activated the old regulator board. Most controls were frozen from decades of neglect, but several still responded with grinding resistance. Pressure readings climbed rapidly. Too rapidly. The underground battle was destabilizing the entire reservoir. Mira! Jalen shouted across the chamber. Ready! She checked the gauges again. If they mistimed the release, the city would crack open. Her father stood at the opposite wheel, both hands gripping rusted iron spokes. For one brief second he looked exactly like she remembered him from childhood. Stubborn, exhausted, unmovable. On your count, he called. Mira swallowed hard. The pressure gauge hit critical yellow. 3, she shouted. The chamber groaned. 2. Above them something colossal crashed through stone. Water exploded from cracks in the ceiling. 1. The wheels turned. Iron shrieked through the chamber like living metal resisting after centuries of stillness. Jalen strained against the eastern wheel with both shoulders. Myra's father forced the western release downward inch by inch. The central shaft beneath them erupted with movement. Water surged upward from the darkness below. The pressure gauges spun wildly. Too fast. Mira! Her father shouted. Secondary valves. She threw herself across the console, wrenching open manual regulators one by one. Steam exploded around her. One valve jammed halfway. Pressure climbed higher. The entire chamber tilted violently. Jalen nearly lost his footing. Stone split above the western platform. Mira looked up just in time to see the support beam collapse. Dad! The beam crashed onto the platform. Her father vanished beneath debris. The western release will stop turning. Immediately the gauges spiked crimson. Jalen yelled across the chamber. Mira! She was already moving. She sprinted through steam and falling debris toward the collapsed platform while alarms screamed around her. The beam pinning her father was enormous. Blood spread beneath the rubble. Mira! He rasped. She dropped beside him desperately. We can lift it. No. We can. You can't. The western wheel had rolled backward slightly after impact. Pressure readings climbed faster now. The release sequence was failing. Her father looked toward the wheel, then back at her. You have to finish it. Mira shook her head immediately. I can't hold the wheel and regulate the valves. You don't need to. Understanding hit her slowly. No. His voice softened. The collapse already crushed my legs. Mira froze. She looked downward, saw the blood, saw the impossible angle beneath the beam. The world narrowed into silence. Jalen's voice echoed faintly across the chamber. Mira, pressure's climbing. Her father reached into his coat weakly and pulled out a folded waterproof notebook. His old engineering journal. The one he always carried. I was wrong, he whispered. She could barely breathe. About what? I thought saving the city mattered more than staying with you. Tears blurred her vision instantly. The chamber screamed around them. Pressure alarms became deafening. He pressed the journal into her hands. You were the best thing I ever built. Then he shoved her backward violently, hard enough to throw her clear. Before she could move, he locked both hands onto the western release wheel and forced his entire crushed body weight downward. The mechanism engaged. The wheel completed its final rotation. All 4 anchor columns detonated open simultaneously. The reservoir released. A wall of water erupted through the central shaft beneath the chamber. And the city above began to shake apart. Vera City moved. Not metaphorically. The entire basin shifted like a living thing awakening beneath its own weight. Buildings cracked apart along ancient fault lines. Towers leaned. Bridges tore loose from anchor points and vanished into clouds of stone dust. Across every district, citizens stumbled into streets as the ground rolled beneath them in violent waves. And from deep below the city, water rose. Real water. It burst upward through dead pipes, abandoned fountains, broken canal beds. Rusted taps that had not worked in years exploded open with black cold torrents. Some people screamed. Some fell to their knees weeping. Some drowned where they stood. Mira barely remembered climbing out of the stabilizer chamber. Jalen dragged her through collapsing tunnels while she clutched her father's notebook against her chest so tightly the edges cut her palms. Behind them, the lower reservoir roared like an ocean forcing itself through veins too small to contain it. Mira! She blinked hard. Jalen was shouting at her from several steps ahead. We have to keep moving. The flood tunnel split apart behind them. Black water thundered through the passage, carrying shattered stone and twisted machinery. They ran upward through trembling corridors while emergency lights burst overhead one by one. Mira could still feel the moment her father disappeared beneath the collapsing platform. Still hear the final rotation of the wheel. Still see his hands slipping in blood. The city groaned again. this time louder. Jalen shoved open a maintenance hatch and both of them emerged into the lower districts of Vera. Chaos. Absolute chaos. The streets had become rivers. Citizens pushed through waist-deep water carrying children, tools, lanterns, whatever parts of their lives they could still hold. Alarm bells screamed from every tower simultaneously while sections of roadway collapsed into sudden sinkholes. And overhead, rain had returned. Not artificial rain from cloud engines. Real rain. Lightning flashed across natural storm clouds gathering above the basin for the first time in generations. People stood in the flooding streets staring upward in disbelief as cold water struck their faces. Some laughed hysterically. Others prayed. Mira looked toward the central towers. One had already fallen. The massive council spire leaned sideways against surrounding structures, smoke pouring from shattered windows. Emergency evacuation craft lifted from upper platforms overloaded with fleeing officials. "They're running," Jalen said. Myra's expression hardened instantly. "Good." A violent tremor ripped through the district. Then came the sound. Not from the city. From below it. The organism beneath Vera was rising. Entire streets bulged upward as pressure surged through underground chambers. Black water erupted from sewer grates and canal walls glowing faintly blue beneath the stormlight. Citizens screamed and fled higher. Jalen grabbed Myra's arm urgently. "If that thing surfaces completely, this basin tears apart." Mira opened her father's notebook with shaking hands while they moved through the flooded streets. Pages of diagrams, pressure calculations, reservoir maps, and one final note written hastily across the last page. "It does not want revenge. It wants release." She stopped walking. Jalen nearly collided with her. "What?" Mira looked toward the collapsing central towers. "The reservoir. What about it?" "The organisms trapped beneath the city." Another tremor split the avenue beside them. A building collapsed into the street with a deafening roar. Mira shouted over the chaos. "The founders sealed it underground centuries ago. The pressure systems, the wells, the cloud engines, they were all designed to contain it while harvesting water from it." Jalen stared at her. "You think it's trying to escape?" "No," she said quietly. "I think it's trying to breathe." Lightning illuminated the basin overhead. For one terrifying instant Mira saw the scale of the damage. Entire districts sinking. Floodwaters swallowing lower markets. The central council towers fracturing from their foundations downward. And beneath the streets, something enormous moving upward through stone. A city-wide evacuation siren began blaring. Not council-controlled. Manual override. Jalen activated his communicator. Static. Then a terrified voice. "All remaining guards report to upper ridge exits. Basin integrity failing." Repeat. Basin integrity failing. The city had hours at best. Maybe less. Mira looked again at the notebook. Then at the ridgeline far above Vera. The natural cliffs surrounding the basin. Her father's sketches showed something there. Ancient floodgates. Sealed before recorded history. Understanding hit her all at once. "Oh no." Jalen saw it happen in her face. "What?" The basin was never supposed to hold permanent settlements. Rain hammered the city harder now. The founders built emergency release gates into the northern cliffs. Jalen's eyes widened. To drain the reservoir? To free it? Another impossible tremor rolled beneath them. This one accompanied by a sound unlike anything Mira had ever heard. A cry. Not monstrous. Not animal. Mournful. The streets around them split open. Blue-lit water erupted skyward in towering geysers. And rising within the flood, human faces, not separate bodies, memories, thousands of them moving beneath translucent currents like ghosts trapped in liquid glass. The missing, the joined, generations absorbed into the network beneath Vera. Citizens fled screaming through the rain. Jalen pulled Mira toward an emergency tram platform barely still standing above the floodwaters. "If those gates exist," he shouted, "how do we open them?" Mira looked at the notebook again, then toward the northern ridge. "There's only one control station left." "Where?" She pointed toward the tallest remaining structure in Vera, the original rain tower, now cracking apart beneath lightning and floodwater. Jalen laughed once in disbelief. Of course it is. The tower shuddered violently. Several upper levels collapsed into darkness. Mira closed the notebook carefully. My father knew. Knew what? That the city couldn't survive like this forever. Rain poured around them in silver sheets. Below the flooded streets, the colossal organism pushed closer to the surface with every trembling breath. Mira looked toward the dying tower one final time. Then she started running. The climb to the rain tower felt like running through the end of the world. Vera was collapsing in sections now. Entire neighborhoods slid downward into widening fractures beneath the basin floor. Floodwater tore through avenues with enough force to rip market carts and transport rails loose like toys. Lightning flashed across the storm above while real thunder rolled through the cliffs for the first time in generations. And beneath it all, the city breathed with something ancient trying to rise. Mira and Jalen crossed the upper bridgeways as steel groaned beneath their feet. Thousands of citizens moved toward the ridge exits in terrified waves. Climbing staircases carved into the cliffs, while guards shouted directions no one could hear over the storm. A child pointed downward through the rain. Look! Mira turned. The streets below had become translucent rivers glowing faint blue in the darkness. And inside them, faces moved. Not trapped. Watching. Remembering. The network beneath the city had spread into every water line, every flood channel, every drop flowing through Vera. Generations of memory surged beneath the collapsing basin like a second civilization awakening under the first. Jalen pulled her onward. The rain tower loomed ahead. Once it had controlled every artificial storm above the basin. Now it leaned dangerously toward the city edge, its lower support structures already submerged in floodwater. Emergency lights flickered weakly behind shattered windows. How do we activate the gates? Jalen shouted over the storm. Mira opened her father's notebook while running. He rewired the tower years ago. What? He knew the council would never release the reservoir willingly. Lightning illuminated the final diagram across the notebook pages. A release sequence connected directly from the tower core to the northern cliff gates. One activation, one chance. Behind them, a deafening crack split the city. Both turned. The central council spire finally gave way. The enormous tower collapsed sideways into the basin in slow, terrible silence before impact swallowed everything in a wall of water and stone. The shockwave knocked citizens from bridges blocks away, and something enormous rose beneath the flood. For one impossible moment, the organism surfaced fully beneath Vera. Not attacking, not destroying, ascending. Its colossal translucent body pushed through shattered streets beneath the stormlight, larger than entire districts, glowing with rivers of blue memory beneath its skin. Thousands of human faces drifted within it peacefully, suspended like stars inside deep water. The city stopped screaming. People stared. Even in terror, even in chaos, they stared. Because the thing beneath them did not look monstrous anymore. It looked wounded, ancient, tired. Mira felt the whisper inside her mind again. Not words. A question. Permission. Then the organism sank partially back beneath the floodwaters as another section of basin wall fractured open. The tower shuddered violently. Jalen grabbed the entrance hatch and forced it open. Inside, the interior stairwell leaned at a dangerous angle. Rain poured through broken walls while emergency alarms screamed from somewhere deep inside the structure. Mira climbed upward 2 steps at a time, clutching the notebook against her chest while Jalen followed close behind. The higher they climbed, the more the tower trembled. Finally, they reached the control chamber. Ancient machinery filled the circular room. Weather engines, pressure regulators, rusted monitoring systems dead for decades. At the center stood a single activation console connected to cables vanishing into the cliff walls beyond the city. Mira moved instantly toward it. The console still had power. Barely. One final command remained active. Northern release gates status. Sealed. Jalen looked through the shattered observation windows toward the basin outside. If those gates open, the reservoir drains into the outer sea. And the city? Mira stared at the collapsing streets below. She already knew. Most of Lower Vera would be destroyed. Maybe more. But without release, everything died. Another massive tremor split the tower floor. The organism below the city cried out again. Louder this time. A sound so full of grief it silenced even the storm for half a heartbeat. Myra's hand hovered over the activation lever. Then the chamber doors burst open behind them. Counselor Sela Merrick entered with 2 surviving security guards. Both carried rifles. Mira, Sela said breathlessly, soaked by rain and ash. Step away from the console. Jalen moved instantly between them. It's over, Counselor. No, Sela snapped. This city can still survive. Mira laughed bitterly. The sound shocked even herself. You poisoned the wells. We protected civilization. You murdered people. We protected order. The tower shook violently again. One guard lost footing entirely. Outside the windows, floodwater consumed another district. Sela stepped forward desperately now, all political masks finally gone. If you open those gates, Vera disappears. Mira looked at her quietly. No, she said. The lie disappears. One of the guards raised his rifle. Jalen fired first. The shot echoed through the chamber. The guard fell backward into dead machinery. The second panicked and fired wildly. Bullets shattered glass across the room as Mira threw herself toward the console. Sela screamed, "Don't!" Mira pulled the lever. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the cliffs surrounding Vera began to move. Ancient gates hidden behind centuries of stone thundered open across the northern ridge. The basin roared. Floodwater surged toward the openings with unstoppable force. Entire rivers tore through the city in violent torrents carrying debris, machinery, shattered bridges. And beneath the water, the colossal organism rose fully one final time. Not to destroy, to leave. Its translucent body moved through the collapsing basin toward the opening cliffs while blue memory light illuminated the storm around it. The faces within it looked outward through the rain. Thousands of lives carried together into the dark beyond the city. Mira felt one final whisper inside her mind. Not fear. Not anger. Gratitude. The tower began collapsing immediately afterward. Jalen grabbed her hand. Move! They ran as the upper chamber split apart behind them. Stone and machinery crashed downward through the stairwells while the entire rain tower leaned toward the draining basin. At the final platform near the ridge exit, Mira turned once more. Vera City was breaking apart beneath the storm. But beyond the shattered basin gates, for the first time in generations, a real ocean waited under the open sky. Dawn began rising beyond the cliffs. Citizens gathered silently along the ridge roads watching the floodwaters drain away from the dying city below. No one spoke. No one knew what came next. Mira stood beside Jalen in the cold morning rain. Soaked, exhausted, grieving harder than she thought a human body could survive. Her father's notebook rested against her chest. Below them, the last of the glowing blue water disappeared into the sea. And somewhere beyond the horizon, something ancient finally breathed freely again.